the soul mirror where medicine meets meaning and the heart speaks louder than habit. I'm your host, Shreya, and today we are joined by Dr. Julius Torelli, a classically trained cardiologist who has spent 4 decades evolving from treatment to transformation. Through his platform Gratefully Well, he teaches that gratitude isn't just a feeling, it's a practice that reshapes our biology, mindset, and health outcomes. If you have ever wondered how your thoughts could heal your body, you are about to find it out. So, welcome, Doctor. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Thanks, Ray. It's an honor to be here as well. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, and Dr. Torelli, what sparked your shift from conventional cardiology to focusing on mindset and gratitude as tools for healing?
It was a very gradual kind of evolution, but it really started early on in my training, and actually in medical school, but then also later on as well, where I started to see that in Western medicine, we tend to focus, let's just say 100%, 99.9% on the physical, right? And it became obvious to me that though in acute situations, sometimes the physical is obvious, right? You have a broken bone, we said it, that's fine. You have appendicitis or you're having a heart attack. We can go in and stop the heart attack or take out your appendix, and that all works. But the great majority of people who come to see the doctors with more chronic symptoms, we don't find anything physical. But yet, even though we don't find anything physical, we still tend to just put people on medications because we don't have anything else in our toolbox to treat them with. Even though we know that, we call it stress. I like to call it sort of emotional behavior kind of basis. We know that the stress is playing a role, but we don't have great treatments. And so I started to look at, a person certainly has a physical component to them, of course, right? But there's also this, mental health kind of component, emotional, behavioral, spiritual, cultural, social aspects of who we are that I think also need to be addressed.
Yes, that's so beautiful, and thank you for sharing this with us. And also, was there a moment with a patient or with yourself that revealed the power of this shift?
Yeah, so it was a little bit. I don't believe in coincidence. I think everything happens for a reason. So my last week of medical school, I was working in a primary care, a family physician office, and a very nice middle-aged woman came in, young middle-aged woman in her late 30s, early 40s, who had severe nausea, vomiting, and dry heaving for like 3 days. She couldn't keep anything down. So we saw her in the office and we put her in the hospital. We gave her, she was dehydrated. We gave her some IV fluids. We ran a bunch of tests and everything came back normal. After 3 days, she was feeling somewhat better. So I went to discharge her. And while I was sitting, writing out her discharge instructions and such, I was making some small talk and I said something corny like, we'll get you home now, so where you can get some real rest because you can't rest in the hospital, right? They're always bothering you. And she said, her reply was, "Oh, I wish." And I said, "You wish?" That was a strange reply. I said, "What do you mean you wish?" She says, "I wish I could go home and get some rest." And I said, "Well, why can't you?" And she says, "Well, in the last 6 weeks, my husband left me, my house burned down, and my dog died." And in that very instant, it was intuitively obvious to me why she had been throwing up and having, nausea for 3 days. That's an overwhelming amount of emotional strife, right?
Mhm.
Overwhelming in such a short period of time, especially. So and the weird thing was, again, I don't believe in coincidence. This was the last week. In fact, when I was discharged, it was 2 days before I was going to graduate. So I knew I had finished all my training, and yet the strange thing was, it was obvious to me, but yet I had not learned anything about this in my training. Not only hadn't I learned anything, I wasn't even sure it was a real thing because I had a whole medical school library that was open to me, and I wasn't even sure where to go in to look this thing, whatever it was, look it up. And then how do you treat it? Is it even something that's real? And I was so confused, and but it was the last, I was just graduating. I had to move, and so I was busy, but that patient stayed in my mind. And then as I went into my residency training, and then my cardiology training, and then in practice, I continued to see that most people who come into the physician offices with chronic complaints, we tend not to find anything physical, right? So today we call those medically unexplained symptoms. And there are things like migraine headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, non-cardiac chest pain, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. All of these are fancy terms for basically, when I think those are fancy terms to say, we know you don't feel well, but we're not smart enough to figure out what's going on because we don't find anything physical in those cases, right? So it becomes a bit of a challenge. And so you don't want to negate those symptoms, because those symptoms can be very debilitating, even disabling for some people. So you may have medicines to treat those. I'm not saying that the pharmaceuticals are necessarily wrong, but they're not going to get at the root cause of the issue, which everyone agrees there's some emotional component. And so you need to find a way, I think, to get to that, let's call it foundational issue or root cause of those issues, and getting to the emotion. And that's a bit of a challenge.
Yes. And I think that kind of moment lingers when the realization that healing isn't just physical, it's so personal. And also, how does a consistent gratitude practice impact physical health, particularly like cardiovascular or stress related conditions?
So the challenge that I had at some point, right, when this is now maybe, so I've been in practice since I graduated from medical school in '86, so that's about 39 years. And I've been practicing as a cardiologist when I finished my training since '92, so that's 30 some years. And so in about 25 years ago, I went into a solo practice, and I wanted to, um I don't want to call it specialized, but wanted to have something to help these kind of patients who are now starting to show up more frequently, not just cardiology patients as a cardiologist, but patients with other medically unexplained symptoms. And so I went out and tried to get some additional training, but then also developed some of my own techniques, because, and what I found was you have to be very careful about how you talk with these patients, because first, you don't want them to think, oh, you think it's all in my head. You think I'm making this up, right? Well, it is in your head, but you're not making it up. It's in your head, from an emotional behavior stress. And so where I start is to have them understand that there's actually neuroscience behind this, right? That thoughts can change physiology, and thoughts are powerful. We don't talk about that in Western medicine, how powerful a thought is, how powerful a belief is. I use the term mindset, but it really gets down to thoughts. So, if you think about it, if you close your eyes and you relax and you think of a lemon and you think about biting into a lemon, you will salivate. Well, there's no lemon there. It's a thought of the lemon that makes you salivate, right? If you are in a situation where you get afraid, you heard a noise and you get startled, and your heart starts racing and your palms get sweaty, right? That's again you find out that nothing really happened. It wasn't, it was your fear of whatever was happening, the thought that caused the physiologic reaction. So thoughts can change physiology, and they can change physiology dramatically, right? And so we don't talk about this in medicine. We don't emphasize it. And if it's acute, like that startle thing, comes and then it goes away and it's gone. But think about if it's chronic, right? If it's you have a difficulty at home, and you have a difficult job, and you have a difficult boss you're dealing with, and things like that, right? Those very challenging situations, when you look at them as a victim, which is a choice, you look at them, then those chronic negative thoughts will cause those chemicals, neurotransmitters to discharge or to change. But then in addition, you tense your muscles, and when you tense your muscles, you have nerves that run through the muscles and such, and you're going to tense your muscles in your neck, in your shoulders, or in your chest. Your belly is very active, very, full of nerves. And so you're chronically stimulating the sympathetic nervous system, the autonomic pathway there called the sympathetic nervous system, and overriding the parasympathetic, which is the system that relaxes you or calms you down. And so after they understand all that, they understand the physiology of beliefs or the physiology of thoughts or just the physiology of maybe emotion or stress, whatever you want to call it. Then we take them through, now that they understand that and why it could be causing their symptoms. Now what do you do about it? And so we use different tools, right? So meditation is one, and mindfulness is another one. um, and those are wonderful tools, but meditation, takes a while to learn. Mindfulness can be challenging to sort of keep up with it. Gratitude is a very simple one, and it's incredibly powerful. So if you look, there's a lot of evidence, a lot of scientific studies that are done on the physical and mental health benefits of gratitude. And so I show them that research, and I show them how powerful gratitude can be. And then I help them understand also that there's a um it's a choice, right? So you have when you right, so let's just say you're stressed at work because you have a terrible boss. Okay. That's what is, right? You may not be able to change that at the moment, right? But you can change the way you perceive your boss or the work situation, right? So what rather than saying, "Oh, my boss, he's terrible, person, he's always too demanding, my job doesn't pay enough, they're very demanding, the hours are long and they're expecting me to do more and more with less and less." And that's all what I call victim mindset. You can also change that, and we fall into that trap of being a victim. And I call it a trap because it it it's easier to blame someone else or something else on your symptoms than to take responsibility for those yourself. So it's easier to say it's not my fault. It's my boss's fault. He's teaching me. It's the work. It's my company's fault because they are so demanding, and so it's easier to blame someone else. But when you put that blame on someone else, it's now out of your control, and so now you're at their mercy. So you're the victim. You can also change the way you perceive that and say, yes, that's true. My boss is difficult and all that kind of stuff. But you can look at it. I'm grateful that I have this job. I'm grateful that I can have an income that I can help and pay for things for my family and such. And when you start to perceive the situation, your work situation, in that grateful sort of way, then in that awareness, like mm, there's something magical about it, where things then at work start to change. And I can't that part of it is hard for me to understand because there's not a good explanation for it, but I see it all the time and it happens. And so, but the key is that word choice. And if I had to summarize everything in gratefully well in one word, it would be choice. Right? That it is difficult to make the choice to take that personal responsibility. Most people do not want to do that.
Yeah, so true. And so wonderful that you explained it so beautifully. And also, what does the gratefully well method look like in practice? Like, is it a ritual, or is it a mindset, science, or is it all of the three?
Yeah, yeah. So this is something that I've struggled with. When I was because what I'm doing right now with Gratefully Well is I'm trying to transform what I did with patients one on one as a physician. I'm trying to transform that into the digital kind of educational space, and it's a lot more difficult than I thought it would be, because I have to sort of present the whole model just as you suggested. And so I've been doing it now for about 6 months. I and it's evolved, but basically where it is there's I start with mindset. I used to start with gratitude, but then everyone thought it was about the gratitude. But gratitude is just a tool, and it's a wonderful tool. But it starts with understanding that mindset, like we talked about at the beginning, right? There is a certain mindset to disease, and it doesn't matter whether the disease is someone with medically unexplained symptoms or even someone with chronic disease, known chronic diseases like cancer or heart disease or diabetes. In the United States, diabetes is epidemic, and it's a lifestyle issue, right? So you do have to be genetically predisposed to diabetes, but it becomes a lifestyle issue, and people need to understand what we go over with them is you might have the genetic predisposition, but you can actually modify the expression of those genes by your mindset and by your lifestyle. But to do that, you have to take responsibility. In the US, it's easier just to say, doc, give me a prescription. I'd rather just take a pill than change my lifestyle and go out and live a more active lifestyle and lose weight and stop smoking and make better food choices and things like that. So once they understand, so it starts with mindset and understanding that you can affect the expression of those genes if it's a genetic thing, or affect the emotions that affect all of your illness, whether it's a known or unknown sort of issue. And then, so that I call that the power of belief. And then we start to get into the tools like mindfulness and meditation and other things that can be done to yoga and tai chi. There are therapeutic therapy counseling techniques like CBT is a good great counseling technique as well. And then we use other tools like the gratitude. And I teach so gratitude can be done in many ways, like the studies, if you look at it, talk a lot about gratitude journaling. So it's very popular today. You should write down 3 things or 5 things every day that you're grateful for. That's effective. The studies show that it's effective. However, you, it's sort of getting to the quality of the gratitude. Like, right, if you're going to sleep at night and you go, oh, I forgot to write my 3 gratitude things in my journal, and you get up and you write down really fast, I'm grateful for my family and I'm grateful for my work and I'm grateful for whatever. That's, maybe it has some effect. But it's not that awe-inspiring gratitude. And so one of the things that I like to talk about it as uh, intentional gratitude or gratitude trace back. And what you do there is try to take one thing you're grateful for, and you can do this on the fly. You can do this if you're in the car. You can do this if you're in line at the grocery store. You can do this anywhere. You don't need a journal. You don't need to sit down, but you can simply just find one thing. So, for instance, this morning, I got up and I was getting my breakfast together, and I opened the refrigerator, and I was like overcome with gratitude for the refrigerator, because think about what life was like before the refrigerator.
Yes.
There's a lot of spoiled food. You couldn't keep food long. There was a lot more illness and food-based pathogens and illnesses that were caused. And then think about what it takes to make that refrigerator, the resources that are necessary to make. We complain about the cost of the refrigerator, but if you think about all the parts that are necessary, right, for that manufacturer has to go out and buy all those parts because they don't manufacture them. Someone has to manufacture them. Then they have to have people. They have to hire people to manufacture, to put together that refrigerator. And someone has to deliver that refrigerator. So it has to be trucks and tires on the trucks and people that drive the truck to get the refrigerator to the store where you can go and look at it and buy it. Someone has to then deliver it to your house so you can get it, right? But then someone had to design, from an engineering standpoint, someone had to design that refrigerator. And you got to be grateful for the engineers who thought that. But someone had to grow the food to feed the engineers. So I call that tracing back the origins of that refrigerator. And when you do that, I think it inspires incredible amount of gratitude. I call that awe-inspiring gratitude. And then you look at that refrigerator now and you don't take it for granted, because we take so much for granted, right? We're so much, we have so much today that we didn't have, right? Think about the changes in India that you have seen, right, in your lifetime. Go back even 50 or 60 years. I mean, big changes that have occurred in India and the United States the same way, but we take those all for granted. And so you can, the gratitude traceback method is really just taking one thing, and like I said, you can do it on the fly. I was in the kitchen. I didn't sit down to get my my journal or whatever. I just did this. It took 1 minute, and it inspires you, and it changes again your physiology, right? It puts you in a good mood. It sets you up. Then I'd like to do it first thing in the morning because it sets you up. But you can do it in the middle of the day if you're stuck in traffic, or if you're having, even at work, and something's going wrong. You can turn it around in an instant with gratitude.
Yes, that's really, really wonderful. And the way you explained it, I think it is really a complex topic, but you explained that with so much ease and beauty. That's really, really wonderful. So, if after this podcast, my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
So, the probably the I so I started. I have a website called gratefully.well.com, and you can go there and do the 7 day gratitude challenge. Basically, there we're just collecting email addresses. So I'm trying right now to build a community of like-minded individuals who are willing to take some responsibility for their own health care, who are looking for resources, who are looking for support in order to live healthy, but they may be healthy and well. They're not sick. They may have medically unexplained symptoms. They may even have chronic diseases. Any of those people really can benefit. So you can start with that 7 day challenge. But more, I also have a free newsletter that's called Gratefully Well. It's hosted on Substack.com. So they can go to Substack.com, search for Gratefully Well. Again, it's free. So I encourage people to subscribe. And then I think most of the communication will come through Substack. So we will have a podcast that we're getting ready to start. We will have workshops. We'll have master classes. And right now we're getting ready to put together a free workshop that'll be probably 3 or 4 weeks. Um, and probably those are the easiest ways to get a hold of it. You can certainly get a hold of it through Substack.com. I also
Yes.
wrote a book that's called Holistic Health Pathways. That is available on Amazon, and it's both in Kindle and paperback version, and I think you can get that in India as well.
Yes, and I will make sure to attach all the details and links below so that the listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you. And because you are a wonderful person and you just made this conversation so, so, so beauty. And uh, I'm really honored to have you on my show. And to all my listeners, Dr. Torelli reminds us that the heart isn't just a pump, it's a compass. And gratitude isn't a soft skill, it's a survival tool. So, if you are navigating illness, stress, or simply life itself, start here. One breath, one thank you, one new thought. Until next time, stay present, stay grateful, and live gratefully.